So apparently some analysts out there think that the housing market is going to drop harder than it did in 2008. So if you lived in 2008, you know that it was not exactly like the Chick-fil-A drive-thru experience. 2008 was more like getting stuck behind the guy ordering 10 milkshakes in the McDonald's drive-thru with the ice cream machine broken. So before you panic list your house and move into your cousin's basement, let's talk about what's actually going on, what experts are saying, and what it means for us here in North Georgia. Spoiler alert, your basement might be worth more than you think, maybe even more than your cousin's. Hey buddy, my name is Tim Gibson and my channel is all about North Georgia real estate. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and if you are thinking about moving to North Georgia or if you are considering listing your home in the area, please reach out. My contact info is on the screen. Okay, so I saw this article on Newsweek a couple weeks ago and I thought, holy cow, if this is correct, then we're all in for a wild ride. So the article was published by Newsweek in November of 2025, and the analyst who wrote the article believes that the housing market could drop by as much as 50% in 2026. Melody Wright is the analyst, and in her opinion, the price correction could happen very soon, possibly starting as soon as 2026. And in her opinion, it could last several years, but in her opinion, it could devolve even faster than the housing crash of 2008. So when I saw the headline, I thought, okay, what's the reasoning behind this and what data did the author use to come up with her position? The two biggest factors that she mentioned are rising inventory and dwindling demand. She goes on to say that many of the markets that boomed during the pandemic, if you think like the Sunbelt states and the Southwest and places like Idaho, a lot of those markets, according to her, are cooling rapidly. She also mentions that on the national level, growth has pretty much stalled across the board in the housing market. To illustrate her point, she mentions that the median sales price of a home in the US only grew 1.2% from October 2024 to October 2025. So if you look at the long-term data since the 1960s, housing prices have grown roughly about 4.3% year over year. And if we look at more recent data, which is, the last 10 or 20 years or so, 5 to 7% has been more the norm in recent history. And to drive her point home, she mentions a recent report that states that over half of the homes in the US lost value over the past 12 months, which is apparently the worst drop since 2012. All right, so how's that for some doom and gloom? Now, if we take this article at face value and if we believe everything that's in there, then we're all gonna be sweating. Okay, so if you're still with me and if you're not sweating too bad, we're gonna dive into this article a little bit more and we're gonna decide if we think that this is actually gonna happen or if it's, not going to be quite as bad. First, we need to look at 2008 and break down what exactly caused the market crash. I'm sure a lot of you remember, I remember, that was a terrible time. First and foremost, I want to generalize and say that the 2008 market crash was brought on by a systematic problem with banking regulation. It was kind of the Wild West. Mortgage lenders were giving out loans to people that should never get a loan. Subprime loans were a massive part of the real estate market back then. And the regulations were so loose that basically anybody could get a loan without really proving their income, their credit history, anything like that. So naturally, it was a house of cards that was destined to collapse. And then once the prices started falling and the markets started to crash, things unraveled rather quickly. Banks were failing, financial institutions were failing, the amount of foreclosures was astronomical, and it led to what we all know now as the Great Recession. But according to the writer of the Newsweek article, in her opinion, the market correction could bring median home prices down to where they match median household income. If you've been on social media at all in the past couple of years, you've seen lots of people talk about how wide the gap between household income and median house prices are in the US. Another point that the writer mentions that could lead to this market correction is that a lot of the home sales in the past couple of years have been all cash buyers or investors. Again, we've all seen lots of videos online talking about how these hedge funds or these big private equity firms are buying up a lot of single family homes in the US. And she believes that once these investors start to fail due to a decrease in rents or high mortgage rates or high maintenance costs, we could see a flood of distressed or neglected properties on the market. And isn't this video a lot of sunshine and roses? So what does all this doom and gloom mean for you as a homeowner or if you bought a home recently? So if you bought a house in the last couple of years and you had a low down payment, then you could potentially be underwater. Over the past couple of years, I have seen a couple of sellers either lose a little bit of money or barely break even on houses that they have sold. So I am seeing that on a small scale here in North Georgia. And if you are a potential buyer, what does that mean for you? If this article is true and not clickbait, which, jury's still out on that, if you're thinking about buying a home in the next year or two, and what this lady is saying is correct, then you could be in line for some amazing deals on buying a home. All right, so if you are a first-time home buyer and you've been struggling to scrape enough cash together to bring a down payment and to buy your first house, I feel your pain because I've worked with a lot of clients over the past couple of years who are in that same situation. And to further illustrate that point, according to the National Association of Realtors, the average age of the first-time home buyer in the US has climbed to 40 years old, which is crazy. But not too long ago, back in the 70s or the 80s, or maybe even the 90s, a single income household could easily afford a median priced house in the US. That's not necessarily the case these days. So if you are that first-time home buyer and you've been waiting to buy your first house, if this market correction does come to fruition, maybe you'll be able to jump into the housing market and buy that first house. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit to the North Georgia market and see what this means for us. In general, I would say the Metro Atlanta and extended Metro Atlanta market, which would cover a lot of North Georgia, is somewhat insulated from some of these market fluctuations because Atlanta is such a desirable place to live. That being said, we do need to pay close attention to the housing market going forward because we did see a huge surge in buyers coming in from other states during the pandemic. So if you're one of those people who bought a house in the Atlanta area or in the North Georgia mountains recently, maybe within the past couple of years or so, make sure to keep an eye on the housing market going forward, especially if you're thinking about selling, because the days of pandemic era explosive home prices is long gone. Whether or not this article is true, we all know that the housing market has slowed down to a more manageable pace, honestly. So what should we do with this information? First of all, let me give you my opinion. I honestly don't think that a correction of this magnitude is going to happen. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But a 50% decrease in the housing market, especially in the Atlanta area in North Georgia, just does not seem very likely to me. The amount of foreclosures and inventory that would have to hit the market for us to see anything close to 50% price reduction across the board. That being said, if you own a home, I would say don't panic. But also don't ignore this. Make sure you have a clear grasp on your mortgage, how much equity you have, and most importantly, think long term. If you plan to stay for 5 to 10 years or more in your current house, a short-term dip or price correction probably isn't going to be the end of the world for you, because just like the stock market, you only lose money if you sell at a loss. So any housing market correction is only going to affect you on paper until you actually sell. And if you plan to buy a house soon, keep your eyes peeled because there may be some deals if this information is actually correct. Look for signs of rising inventory, meaning tons of houses that sort of fit your criteria in your selected area. Look for houses that have been on the market for a long time, and look for price reductions across all price points in a given area. That could be your signal that there are good deals out on the market for you. And for those of you who live in North Georgia, or if you are thinking about moving to North Georgia, make sure you know the market and make sure you're in contact with an agent who's following the market, analyzing the data, and giving you good information based on your situation, what's best for you. Because having that very localized information is going to protect you from freaking out about sensationalist national headlines. All right, so hopefully you haven't locked yourself in a dark room and curled up in the fetal position after this video. Just take this news article with a grain of salt because I don't think a lot of these things that she's mentioning are probably going to happen. But tell me what you thought about the content of the article and this video. Tell me what you think is going to happen in 2026 and beyond in the housing market in North Georgia, or maybe what your experience has been over the past year or so trying to buy or sell a house. And of course, let me know if you have any questions or you want some more information on the North Georgia market. As always, my number is on the screen if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia or if you're considering listing your home. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.